Hey, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Love Encompassed podcast. I'm Phil.
And I am Victoria.
And we're going to get right into it today. You know, last week we talked about forgiving other people. And then we got done with the podcast and we just started talking. And we're like, hey, we should have talked about forgiving ourselves.
Yeah, because that is just as important as forgiving other people. Is to forgive ourselves as well. Like, be kind to yourself and, give yourself grace.
Yeah, I think it's harder to forgive other people if you have a hard time forgiving yourself.
True. Maybe, though. I don't know. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would.
I think if you struggle with forgiving other people, you're going to struggle with forgiving yourself.
Unpack that for me.
Okay, so think about it. If somebody does me wrong and I hold on to it and I'm very unforgiving or whatever, then I'm probably going to be the same way with myself, right? I'm not going to be like, I forgive myself all the time, but it's other people. I probably have a problem like letting go of things that I've done wrong.
Or it could be that, maybe that's not the case because when you're dealing with other people, you can't control their actions. But if you're like maybe upset with yourself, you're like, dang it, you shouldn't have did that. But girl, you gonna get it better next time.
Yeah, I've never said, girl, you gonna. When I'm talking to myself, I don't say, girl.
But I can agree with that because I know I said last week, when the Bible talks about, you loving your neighbor as you love yourself. I can agree with that. You know what I mean? Now that you've explained it in that way, I can see how that can be true because, if how I love my neighbor is a reflection of how I love myself, then probably how I forgive others will be how I forgive myself. So I can see that. Yeah.
Once I unpack it,
you have on record me saying you were right and I was wrong.
This is the best podcast we've ever recorded in the history of podcasting.
There you go. You're one time. No, I'm just joking.
I have nothing left to say.
You said I have one, and you can talk about whatever you want after this.
Yeah, because I
got that.
Doesn't even bother me.
But yeah, so let's talk about why do you think that people have a hard time? Because I don't think everybody falls underneath that boat. So those that do, why do they have a hard time, or we may have a hard time of forgiving ourselves? Yeah,
I think I'm probably harder on myself than I am other people. And so I think it could be anything. I mean, you have people who want to be perfect. Like everything has to be perfect. They have to be perfect. Everything has. And when it falls short of that, they automatically assume maybe it's themselves or whatever. When you're talking about forgiving, it's in order to forgive yourself, you have to have done something that you knew you shouldn't have done, right? So it's like I messed up, so I've got to forgive myself for it. And I think if you're a perfectionist, you don't want to mess up.
Yeah. And I can agree with that because I definitely, I'm going to say in faith, overcoming that because I tend to be a perfectionist and super hard on myself only because I think it stemmed from insecurity. I think part of it is because I'm a creative and I just want things to be just so. But I think also because just from past insecurities of feeling like not good enough. So if I try to be perfect, then that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. So then every decision will be rooted from that. And if I'm not careful, when it doesn't line up to my quote unquote idea of perfection, then it's like, dang it, I shouldn't have done that because now this, or dang it, I shouldn't have done that. But I can say I was way more that way when I was younger. Now that I'm getting older, because we've had a conversation about this, right? Now that I'm getting older, I'm realizing that there is no such thing as perfect. I can strive for excellence. I can strive to be the best that I can be. But the reality, I'm fooling myself into thinking hey, I have to be perfect and I have to strive for perfection because it doesn't exist. So it's almost like I'm setting myself up for failure.
Yeah. It's like if you were if you were in a marriage or you're getting ready to get married or whatever, and you think it's going to be perfect, like you're never going to make a mistake, it's going to be honeymoon 24/7, and then it doesn't, it can rock you because you're like, oh my gosh, like I had this view of what it was going to be, and then for whatever I make a mistake or whatever it is, or you say something you wish you wouldn't have said, and you ask the other person like, hey, do you forgive me? And they're like, yes. But if you're just like, I ruined that perfect,
I can't believe I did that.
yeah, then you carry that with you the whole entire time, and people feel it. Like I've done that. Like I've made mistakes, and I just keep thinking about the mistake, and then like maybe you or even the boys will be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And you're like, nothing.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Sometimes for me, when I feel like I've made a wrong decision, and this may be like, whoa, it's not that deep, sis. But when I feel like I've made a wrong decision, for me, the way I used to process it is like, dang it, if I wouldn't have made that decision, I would have been farther along.
Yeah.
Dang it, if I didn't make that decision, then that thing wouldn't have happened. So now you're kind of almost living in this place of regret. You know what I'm saying? Because if I would have done things different. And then I think what happens is, speaking for myself, I mean, I be for you as far as the listener goes. But I think for me, what happens then is you become kind of like, it's almost like you're paralyzed in fear to make a decision in the future. You're slow to make decisions in the future out of fear of, well, I don't want to,
That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because if you don't forgive yourself for mistakes you make, you can almost get stuck not wanting to make a decision for the fear that it could be the wrong one. So you just kind of stay stagnant and stuck the entire time.
Or you can stagnate your relationships out of fear of, oh, I don't want to say this thing because what if I say this thing and it hurts that person's feelings, and it, takes that person down the wrong road, or down, tunnel them down into, like, spiral them down. That's what I'm looking for. Or I don't want to, because something that happened in my past, I'm making a bad decision. I don't want to say that to my child because what if, and then the next thing you know, it's affecting the way you parent and show up, because now you're living from a place of fear because you didn't forgive yourself over something, or because you're being hard on yourself. And then as a result, now that thing is that filter in everything that you move and work through.
Yeah, because everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Everybody screws up.
Yeah.
But the hard part is sometimes when you've made the mistake and screw up and somebody says that to you, like, hey man, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Everybody. You always think it's like the worst mistake though. You're like, I know, but I should have. And this is what I do sometimes. I should have known better.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Right. And then I start thinking about it. And I've even gone down roads where I'm like, I'll think of the whole scenarios where it's like, man, if I just would have, man.
That mental replay is real.
Oh. And before you know it, it's like, man, now I'm retired. And you're like, retired? What? But it's like, you're like, I could have retired way early. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So I think it's sometimes I love what you said. That gets you stuck. And I think that's what happens when you don't forgive yourself. You can get stuck back in whatever it is you did, and life continues to move forward. Things continue to roll on, and then you're just kind of stuck in one spot.
And then I think it starts to take away your joy, and you're no longer living life to the fullest. I think one thing that I have gotten to a place as I'm getting older and as I'm approaching the wonderful age of 40 is that, like I said before, realizing that perfection doesn't exist. I can strive to grow. I can strive to be better. I can strive for excellence, but letting that be my compass instead of trying to do this thing from insecurity, but also because in forgiving myself and recognizing that it's impossible to go through life and not have a failure. It's impossible to go through life and not have a bad decision, because in the moment when you're making that decision based off of the information you have at that time. Right? And so it's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to be kinder to myself because based on the circumstance that I was in, the position that I was in, and the things that were surrounding me to give me the information to make the decision that I needed to make, I did the best I could in that moment. So as time has gone by, instead of being stuck in the whirlwind of, dang it, I shouldn't have, instead I can look back and say, okay, what decisions worked? What decisions didn't work? And how can I use that information to better make my decisions for my today and for my future?
Yeah. Because when you were talking, I was thinking about when you don't forgive yourself and you don't extend yourself some grace and you don't, what ends up happening is your future starts to become, basically everything changes. You begin to mope around.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to, it's like, in your future no longer, you don't have a hope for the future.
Mm-hmm.
You have man, I'll probably mess up again. I equate it like this. If I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a decision to get healthy.
Because that Cheez-Its has a stronghold on you. Let them loose. Let them loose.
Wow. It's messed up. I'd like to go back to the start of this podcast when I was right. But here's what I've noticed with myself. I'll say, all right, I'm gonna get healthy. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and I'll be going good. Then I'll mess up. Maybe Cheez-Its. Maybe get some fast food or something. And I notice when I'm like, dang it, why did I do that? Then what it starts to do in my mind is I start saying, well, forget it.
Yeah.
I already missed it.
Yeah.
So, and it would be easier if I was just said, hey, you messed up. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward. I have a good friend of mine who's a trainer, and he'll be like, don't even worry about it. Just move on to the next day. And it's like, no, I missed. Like, it's over. It's all going downhill. You know what I mean? It's like, bring on the ice cream, the oatmeal cream pies. Everything's over with.
Yeah.
Now. All because if I just was like, hey, messed up.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Move forward. Things happen in life. But if you're not careful, I'm using that as health-wise, but you can use that in if you're making financial decisions, if you're like, oh, man, I made a bad financial decision, forgive yourself, move forward.
Yeah, because it's like essentially what you're saying is like, that rock that you throw in the river and it does like the skipping across.
Skipping stones,
which is a skill. For those that can do it, good for you. Because
here.
I'd be like,
skipper of stones.
But basically, it's like, okay, your decision is like a fork of the road. Your decision in forgiving yourself can continue to lead down a positive and just like constant readjustments and realigning. Or like what you were saying, if I flip it and make it into a negative, then it's a chain reaction of consistently making more and more and more bad decisions.
Yeah.
That's going to just kind of lead you down a road that you don't want to go.
I was thinking everybody has it on the inside of them to do it. Because think about it. If you've ever driven at all, everybody's made a wrong turn.
Yes.
And no one has ever said, you know what, just forget it.
That's a good point.
I'm not going to Chick-fil-A. I took a wrong turn. You will put it back in your maps and figure out a way to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So everybody has it on the inside of them to be like, man, I made a mistake. It's blah, blah, blah. I think we just look at things as catastrophic. Like, you're like, oh, well, that's just driving. Yeah, but that's just life in general, though. Because I can make a wrong mistake, and if I just say, oh, you know what, let me put this back in my maps and realign and find another route. Oh, you don't go down a road, and it says on, and this has happened to me, you're driving, and all of a sudden it says, like, the road's closed. All I do is say, all right, well, let me follow this detour to where I need to go. Oh, look, I'm where I need to go. But yet sometimes we make mistakes and then we think, all right, it's over.
Do you think, because it's listening to you, do you think that we do that because you're right, and that's a really good point, right?
You just said that was a really good point, and you said earlier
you
in
two
the
for
podcast,
two,
it's the best podcast we've ever done.
2 for 2.
Best podcast.
Do you think, though, just listening to you say that could be the reason that is because how we place a price tag on our decisions. Yeah. So, like with driving the Chick-fil-A, us messing that up is not the end of the world because that decision didn't cost us a big thing because we didn't place the value high.
Right.
But when it comes to life and people and relationships, when we make a bad decision, or whatever, it's bigger because we place higher value on that.
Yeah, I think it's like if you look at, I heard somebody say one time, it said, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. Because even if you make it's a catastrophic decision. You can still bounce back from it.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard stories of whether they're billionaires or whatever, and it's like even I was listening to or I saw a TikTok that was Kevin Hart, how he said, I got told no 200 times, yet still came back.
Right.
So I think the other thing is it's like you can come back from anything. Mm-hmm. You either spend your energy and your time on what you did wrong, or you spend your energy and time on correcting and moving forward.
That's good.
You really only have two choices.
Yeah.
Because you can dwell in the past, or you can say mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Let's learn and go forward.
Yeah.
I can, using the driving analogy, right? It's like, well, I can dwell on, man, why did I take this way?
Right.
And I hate traffic. Like,
yes.
I'm the maps guy. I will look, and if there's the slightest yellow or red, I'm going a different route.
Right.
Right? And they're doing construction by our house. And it's like, there's one lane that I know if you get in, you're going to get stuck. And I keep getting in that lane. And then I know it's coming. And I keep getting in the lane. And we were driving the other day, and I was in the lane, the other lane. And I was like, I did it this time. You know what I mean?
Remembered.
Like, right. It's like, so it's like you can learn, and you could say, all right, I'm going to learn from it. Or if you're like, well, this is just the way it is. You know, I made a mistake. It's
Dang
over.
it, why did I do it again? You know, I feel like, you know, in extending grace to ourselves and realizing that this thing called life, this journey of life, we are all new to it.
Yeah.
We are all new at it. And so it's just like, hey, you know what? Why are you walking in a way of thinking like you should have known better, you should have done differently, because like as if you had all the answers? A lot of the times we know to do different because we made a mistake, or because, you know, we had a failure. You knew after so many times of getting in the wrong lane, I need to do this different. I need to make this shift so I don't keep ending back in that spot. And sometimes 100%. We do have moments where it takes, you know, more than one time to learn the lesson. But my attitude is like, okay, but I learned the lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I was just thinking somebody's probably listening to this that like maybe they're single and they've been dating or whatever, and they're like, I keep picking the wrong person every single time. Or maybe they've been married a couple times. I keep picking the wrong person. It's like, well, then forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Learn. Recognize the things in the next person, or recognize the things in yourself that got to that point, and then learn, but don't give up.
No.
Don't give up on on, you know, finding the relationship or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself for whatever happened, and then learn from it and move forward.
Yeah. And let's like just keep it real. There are some decisions that is life altering.
Yes.
Like, I mean, it happens, you know, and I couldn't imagine being in that position where a decision I made changed somebody else's life or mine, like literally for not in a positive way. Like I couldn't imagine. With that being said, it's almost like I also feel like, okay, but you being hard on yourself in a way of kind of making you pay for it isn't changing what happened.
No, it doesn't change it at all. And here's what it does. It just keeps bringing you lower.
Yeah.
You keep going over it and over it. And it's probably why, like, obviously, Jesus said in the Bible, he's like, don't give a thought for tomorrow.
Right.
Tomorrow's got enough of its own.
Right.
Right. In other words, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up along the road, but don't worry about that. Right. You mess up today, forgive yourself, move forward.
Right.
You know, do better.
Yeah.
I love what you said. It's like pursue excellence in your life. Pursue your goals, your dreams, your all these other things. But when you make a mistake, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
And you can't change it. That's the other thing is you can't go back and change it.
No.
If I could, I would have went back and changed lots of things.
Yeah. There's this saying, I remember when I, was working in the hair industry, and I went to this beauty show, hair show in Chicago.
I went there with you.
Yeah, it was a good time.
I didn't
You didn't go
go-
to the hair show because you can't go in unless you're a licensed person.
And I'm bald, so it would make no sense.
You
But
being bald doesn't mean anything. You just
I'm
didn't
not
have a
going to a
license.
hair
You couldn't- it would benefit you none. But I remember at this hair show, at any hair show, they have at certain times there's these platform artists that would do a lesson on a haircut or whatever, or color application or whatever. And there was this one particular artist that I really enjoyed learning from, and he said something. He says, "There are no mistakes, there's only discoveries."
oh, that's good.
Right? And
Yeah,
of course he was
really
referring
good.
to hair, like whatever. But when he said that, I was like, oh, there are no mistakes. There's only discoveries. So it's like, had that not happened, I wouldn't have known to next time not do that. Had that not happened, or even with just being a mom now, there's things that I've experienced in life, or decisions that I made, or just learning how not to live in the unrealistic world of being a perfectionist, right? That now that because I learned how to maneuver in that space and shift my perspective, now that we have boys or we have kids, when they do certain things or make certain decisions, or our oldest, when he sometimes kind of want to fall in that world of want to be perfectionist, I can now speak from a place of experience and understanding, versus if I would have never learned that. Now it's something that is a repeated behavior that's been passed down to our kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I've learned in forgiving myself. Now, everybody deals. It's like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But I also think mine came from more from a sports, to be honest, because playing baseball or playing basketball, in baseball, if you get 3 hits out of 10, you're actually really good. So you fail 7 times.
Wow.
And they're like, that guy's really good.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and in basketball, you miss shots. It's just part of it. So it's like, I think from learning from that, it's like, I used to have coaches that were like, play's over. That play's over. Move forward. If you keep thinking about that play, or you keep thinking about that at bat, then you won't be ready for the next one.
That's good.
And then you find yourself in what they call in baseball, you're in a slump.
That's good.
Can't seem to hit. You can't, nothing's going right. It's like you're in a slump because you're not forgetting that's over. That's done. You can't change it. You struck out. You messed up. It doesn't matter, And it's like they'll tell you that new at bat.
Right.
I tell our boys all the time they're basketball players.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, new quarter.
Yeah.
Play's over.
Yeah.
New quarter.
Yeah.
We take it quarter by quarter.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. Why? Because if you start thinking, man, I haven't shot good all game.
Yeah.
Then you'll continue to not shoot good all game.
Or even in driving. Driving is a constant series of adjustments.
Yeah, that's good.
To stay in the center of the lane, it's a constant series of adjustments. So it's like, okay, well, if that's in how you're driving, why not perceive life the same way? It's a constant series of adjustments. If I, accidentally get into the other lane because I, overcorrected a turn, I don't say, dang it, Victoria, you know better. You know what I mean?
I kind of hope you do.
I would be doing too much.
Damn, Victoria, you're better than that.
Why did you saw the dotted lines.
Right. Right.
But one thing I can say that I am learning. I don't do it as bad as I used to do. But I'm just gonna put myself out there because I ain't scared. But I want my recovery to be quicker.
That's good.
So learning, yes, I'm learning to forgive myself. Yes, I'm learning to be kind to myself. Yes, I'm learning to be more gracing to myself. I'm learning to be. I want to be quicker in the rebound. So where in times past where I would forgive myself or I do forgive myself, sometimes it takes days to get out of the funk for me because I do, get caught up in being like, dang it, or whatever the case is. And then, whatever. And I think a lot of that probably also comes from like how I processed things when I was younger with dealing with childhood trauma, whatever. But now that I'm kind of like healed some of past that, I'd be like days into it, but I would like to rebound quicker.
Yeah.
Not take so long.
Yeah. And I think that's a growing process. Like you have to grow into that, forgiving yourself for the mistakes you make, and you'll continue to keep growing and growing into it.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I could also, and this is for anybody else out there that may tend to do what I do, is getting to the root of the why.
Yeah.
Does it take me so long? Or why does it take us so long to rebound back? Is it because, yes, I forgave myself, but I'm working through not like a grief of it could have been different if I would have chose different or whatever the case is. I think I just have to shift my perspective in thinking that my future would have been different if I would have made a different decision. Like,
yeah.
Either way, if I believe that the scripture, it will work out for my good or bad decisions that I make, it's not going to affect the positive destiny that God has for me.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
well, I love this one.
Yeah, you say that at everyone.
I do
now.
say this one, but I love this one the most because you said I was right.
And you have it on record.
And it's on record. So thank you so much for joining us this week on the podcast. And where can they follow us at?
They can follow us on Instagram at Love Encompassed Podcast, as well as individually, Phil Clemens, and then myself, Victoria Clemens. If you are watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Make sure you hit the subscription button if you haven't already. Hit that notification button so you know when we release an episode. Share with someone that you feel like, hey, you know what? I think this will help them, as well as on Apple and Spotify. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, go ahead and share with a friend or someone that you think would benefit as well. And give us a follow. We would love it as we continue to grow our podcast community.
Yep. Well, we'll see you next time on the Love Encompass podcast.